All right. So this is going to be podcast number one. We're going to be posting this to BitChute and YouTube, and we just want to clarify that we genuinely are trying to have open dialogue. We're trying to have genuine, honest discussions about things. So if for anyone watching this, like, it doesn't matter if you're just some like random anonymous BitChute account. If you post in the comments any subject or any question, we will respond to it in the next podcast. We genuinely like the purpose of this, like basically it'd be fair to say that our morality is basically just largely we just are trying to be intellectually honest about things. So yeah, we're open to dialogue and people bring up any subject, any comment that is posted, we will respond to it honestly. Doesn't matter if you're some random neo-Nazi anonymous commenter on BitChute, we will respond to any comment, no matter what the subject is, and we'll answer it in our next podcast. So this is podcast number one. This is our first random attempt. And yeah.
We truly are proponents of absolute free speech. We truly believe that people should be free to discuss anything openly.
Yeah, that's why we're on, like, that's what's brought us to BitChute. And another thing to clarify is like like I said, our morality is mostly just being intellectually honest about things. Like all we're doing is trying to be intellectually honest. That's like why we're here on BitChute in the first place. And like I feel like that's an important thing to like remind ourselves of. Like we're not here because of like some super like evil right-wing racist tendencies or anything. We're here just we've been brought here probably like a lot of people listening. We've been brought here just because we're intellectually honest. So that makes us intellectually honest about race and about what's going on. And that's the fucking like that's a key aspect of our morality. Just
Because none of us like are naturally like have natural right-wing tendencies, whatever that might be. Like it's not like we look at it through that lens. It really is. It really comes down to really trying to process reality and the truth as best as we can.
yeah, exactly. Well, to clarify, like we both would be right wing now. Like we definitely would both vote right currently. But it's not like
True.
it's not like I don't know, like Jonathan Haidt, I don't know, like Jonathan Haidt studied the psychology of political positions. I don't think I fit into the typical conservative psychology. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to go over all my beliefs right now, but I don't think I'm a typical conservative. Like I don't think it's like a genetic I don't think I have a genetic predisposition to be on the right. Well, I guess in some way because I think we're both trying to be logical. That might be somewhat genetically based. But we're not on here just because of some kind of right wing, like inherent sentimentality that is genetic. We're here because we value truth mostly, and the right is just clearly the best position. But I guess we can elaborate on that now, or we can
Yeah, like
elaborate
from
on that throughout time.
because from like let's take a religious stance. I mean, like traditionally, the right wing has been more uh, they've been more religious, for better or for worse. But like like I see myself more as an agnostic type of person.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not. Yeah, neither of us are religion. Like I'm for legalizing drugs. We're both pretty much for maximum liberty. But we're not like silly about it. Like we don't want to open the borders. The borders need to be fucking closed almost entirely, if not entirely. But yeah, and I'm fine. I don't give a fuck about abortion, to be honest. I don't give a fuck about abortion. I'm actually in favor of post-birth abortion because like what if you have a kid and it's retarded? I don't want to take care of it. I'd want it to be killed. If I had a retarded kid, just being completely honest, I wouldn't see it as wrong to kill it. So I'm for post-birth abortions. I don't know if you are also, but that's just how I feel.
it is honestly, it's a really tricky matter. Like I know a lot of people might take it as a joke or something, right? They might be like, "Oh wow, well that's just murder." But it's like, is it though? Because
Yeah,
the way our society is structured right now, basically, you kind of have full control over your kids to some extent, right?
yeah,
As a parent.
yeah. I'm 100% not joking. I'm genuinely in favor of post-birth abortion, killing the fucking if I'm talking about genuine retards though, not like quote unquote autism, not fucking Down syndrome. Yeah, I guess it's genuinely retarded, but like you've seen retarded people. We've all seen retarded people. They don't live a high quality of life, and people are always caring for them. Like it's just a horrible existence that like we shouldn't fucking I don't think it would be inhumane to kill retarded babies. Basically, is my position. So I'm fine with abortion. Anyway, I guess we should.
Sorry, just what I said earlier didn't really make sense because, uh, yeah, so I guess as it stands right now, most laws prohibit you from I guess aborting a fetus after a certain amount of months. So, yeah, it would be considered murder, I guess, to kill an infant, right?
Of course, yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously, a parent doesn't have like the like total and absolute control over the kid, but yeah.
Yeah. It would. Well, that I mean, it's a somewhat arbitrary subject. It's kind of arbitrary where you define where life begins. But anyway, I don't really want to get too far into abortion. I was just giving it as an example for how like I'm not like I don't align with the typical right wing view on everything. But currently, definitely, you got to vote for the right. The left is fucking insane right now. We can get into what's going on now. I feel like that's appropriate. Like what's going on right now. It seems like we're on the verge of a fucking civil war. I am pretty convinced that some sort of civil war is gonna happen. Um, like whether or not Trump gets elected, I don't see either option as or either scenario as good in the sense that when it comes to whether or not we're going to have a civil war. I think either way we're going to have some kind of civil war. I would obviously prefer if Trump got elected. I think basically if Trump gets elected, they're going to try to remove him from office. They're going to continue to riot, and obviously the media is going to be dishonest about it. And so that is the way in which civil war will kind of manifest itself in that situation. If Biden gets elected, I think it'll be more so the rioting will calm down, but they will continually push to take away freedoms like freedom of speech. They'll try to take away people's guns. They'll try to demonize like white nationalism more and more. And I think it'll be more of like a slow encroachment, which is arguably more dangerous than if a direct civil war were to start. So I'm a little more worried about that possibility. I think if that's how I would guess it would play out. If Biden gets elected, they will just start slowly encroaching on things, like making hate speech a crime, eliminating freedom of speech. Like they're already doing that in Canada and European countries, and I think Australia too. So I think they'll start doing that in the U.S. I think they're already trying to get people's guns. I think that'll happen more and more, and then they'll
I don't know,
demonize.
this thought.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I just wanted to talk about your point about taking the guns. Could you see a situation where the government could justify actually giving guns to certain groups of people because they believe that they'd help them, further solidify their power, like giving guns to members of BLM and Antifa, or I don't
Yeah,
know,
I mean, I don't
as
think
a
that. Yeah, not the government, I don't think, but that is already happening with like billionaires like George Soros. They're funding these groups and they are becoming armed. Like that's definitely going on. I don't think it would be a government thing to do that, but definitely there are high level people with a lot of money and influence who will do that. I think it's already happening. I'm pretty sure. But
while subsequently taking guns from those people that they view as being uh, somehow evil or whatnot, like
yeah,
more Republican type of people.
yeah, I would say the biggest threat is the slow encroachment. I think if it continues right now, it's kind of working in the right's favor because it's very extreme. It's very outwardly incoherent and violent, like these riots. It's pretty like in your face. Which is I think is good for the right because like it's making the distinction clear whether which as to which side you're on and which side is moral and which side isn't and what their true intentions are. I feel like that's more so going to continue to be the case if Trump gets reelected. And I feel like it's going to be more of a slow, subtle encroachment if Biden is elected. And I think long term, that's probably more dangerous. I think they'll slowly start picking off certain things like freedom of speech, freedom to own guns, and they'll slowly start demonizing fringe groups, just like they're doing on just like if you look at YouTube censorship, for example, how they started off with censoring who was like one of the first people to go that got censored, like Red Ice TV. That was pretty early to be censored off of YouTube, but then it slowly went to more and more mainstream channels. You get like Stefan Molyneux censored, and then you get the Red Elephants. That channel recently got taken down, and that was basically just a conservative channel. That's how it progressed, right? It went to went from Red Ice, pretty much explicitly white nationalists, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it went from that to Stefan Molyneux, who was more liberty oriented, but he would mention racial differences, and then it went straight to the Red Elephants, which the red elephant is a reference to the symbol of the Republican Party, right? It's just a Republican channel. That now they've gotten to the level where that's being censored, and I think that is how the societal encroachment will play out if the left has substantial power in society. They'll start by picking off certain things. They'll start by they'll probably make it illegal to be a white nationalist. They'll probably, just like Trump has made Antifa a terrorist organization, they'll probably first of all, they'll make neo-Nazis a terrorist organization, and then they'll slowly start expanding it to just white nationalists, which is such a vague term. It's so unsubstantiated that white nationalism is even a bad thing, and that's fucking worrying and dangerous.
It reminds me of the term war on terrorism. It's
Yeah.
really you're committing yourself to a war based on an ideology, based on what people's thought processes. Can you really wage war on that?
Based on an emotionally loaded buzzword like terrorism. Terrorism is less like that, but it is to some extent. It has at least a coherent definition that people somewhat respect. Like using violence to encourage a political movement or whatever is terrorism. So it has, so it is like that. That's like some full-on 1984 shit. But it'll get even worse. And I feel like that's a good thing to focus on right now. Like Biden, people aren't recognizing how dangerous Biden is. He fully is quoted as saying that what motivated him to run for president, which was seeing Charlottesville. And what was Charlottesville? It was a collection of people, mostly just who were just vaguely white nationalists, maybe a few neo-Nazis or whatever, but just basically white nationalists, which just means, in my opinion, it just means people who are white and have an ethnic self-interest and who don't want to become more of a minority in their own country. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That's completely normal and sane. I mean, we could get into the definition of white nationalism. I mean, a lot people will phrase it as if you're an ethnic nationalist, it means you want your country 100% white, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think within the group that is under the label white nationalists, there are people who would like their country to be 100% white or whatever, but I don't think that's inherent to the definition, because that's clearly not how they're using it. If you're white and you basically express any desire for your country to remain white, not even that you want it to be 100% white, they'll still put you in that categorization. So that's being strongly demonized, and Biden is quoted. I think people are underestimating this, but Biden's quoted as saying that was his reason for fucking running. He recognized that as a problem out of anything, any kind of problem in the world. He pinpointed that as the problem that made him start running, or that made him decide he needed to start running. And then he's also quoted as saying that whites are going to become a minority in the U.S. and that it's a good thing, and that it is going to continue to happen through an unrelenting stream of immigration. When you really look at Biden, those were what he was talking about in the early days. Those were his major talking points. That's what he was basically running on at first. And I think people are underestimating how fucking serious that is, and how central that is to what he's planning. We have an actual presidential candidate who's making that his his fucking main issue, white nationalism, which is fucking absurd and crazy. Like we're not allowed to not want to be replaced in our own homelands. That's fucking crazy. Like it's
Right.
the left is just absolutely ridiculous, and it's
That's honestly, that's that a lot of what we plan to do is kind of delving into that, right? Delving into just because it is a really, it's such a fundamental issue that people are either afraid to address or don't want to, or it's really a huge phenomenon in society right now. And like
yeah,
I think we both fear the consequences of not addressing this properly. Like
yeah.
society really could crumble,
It
like in fundamental ways.
Yeah, it already fucking is. It like that's how the left operates. They operate by basically they don't actually argue with anyone. They don't actually debate anyone. They don't actually discuss ideas. They just have emotionally loaded buzzwords and then they use those to demonize people and that's it. That's the end of their discussion. Like that's how they operate. They just make emotionally loaded buzzwords like fucking racism, anti-Semitism, white supremacist, neo-Nazi. They just throw these around instead of actually analyzing things logically. And that is not how a society can function. That is deeply flawed, and society will not be able to function like that. It's gonna lead to horrible shit. It's really dangerous. It's important for just society to start being familiarized with how bullshit and how meaningless these terms are, how
And
unsubstantiated they
for
are, poorly
and honestly,
defined.
for a lot of it's like everything you're saying is completely true. And for for especially conservatives, to be the types who believe it's all about policy, it's absurd. I mean, come on, let's be real. Like a lot of those on the left, they like to reference the Scandinavian countries that as a model for what they want in terms of having more of a socialist country or implementing those ideals. And it's like, yeah, but those countries are predominantly white, and people don't. It's ironic that the left loves to point to Scandinavia and sees them as a model of success when it's mostly yeah, like a lot of that is based on race. As much as people don't like discussing it,
Yeah, I know.
like
Like
they
how
like to believe that it's purely based on policy is insanity to me. Like to really not factor in ethnicity and other things.
Yeah, exactly. Like we have examples of socialist countries that are doing horribly that aren't white, and then we have examples of socialist countries that are doing really well that are white, and we're supposed to believe that it's the socialist policies that are the main difference there, even though they're both pretty much the same in each country. And it's but yeah, I don't know. The fucking they don't they talk about policies. That's kind of their way of seeming seeming civil. They like to talk about social policies, and to be honest, I don't think that's not my main focus. It's the underlying evil nature that they operate with. Like I was saying, like Biden fully said the reason he started running, it wasn't a social policy, it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't about policies. The reason he started running, like he said, was because of Charlottesville, because he saw that there were people who believed that who were against white people becoming a minority. That's his main reason for running, and that's deeply fucked up. Like the left is anti-white, obviously. They fucking hate white people. If we were to say that, like imagine if we were to say that about fucking any other group. If we were to say like, oh, Nigeria is gonna cease to be Nigerian, black people are gonna be a minority in Nigeria, and that's a good thing, and it will continue with an unrelenting stream of migrants into Nigeria that they never consented to, and we need less black people in positions of power in Nigeria. The reason the country sucks is because there's too many black people in positions of power. Imagine we started saying that about Nigeria. That would be
Well,
recognized as completely racist and hostile and hateful.
and when we do recognize that it is that we label that colonialism. and
Yeah,
that's what that's the especially fucked up part. It's like we recognize when Europeans did it to other countries, but it's like when it's being done to white societies, it's like it's not somehow justified now.
yeah,
It's something to
exactly.
be applauded. That's the real fucked up thing here. It would
Well,
be
I
one
think,
thing
yeah,
if you are somebody who believed that I just believe that all like everything should just be open borders. I'd have some respect for that because you're at least being consistent intellectually.
yeah.
I mean,
But they're not. They're anti-white. They're not
yeah,
consistent. They're anti-white. Yeah, it's a really important thing to realize that because they throw around terms that they're emotionally loaded buzzwords like racism, like they're against racism when everything shows that they're not, or that they're against colonialism. But everything shows their beliefs show that's not the case. And I think it's important to realize that um, not everyone like most people use words like well, everyone who uses words didn't come up with them, right? They're using things they heard other people say, and like like everyone can repeat words, but just it's important to realize that just because someone's saying a word or using a term like racism, that doesn't actually mean they understand it on a deep level. It's important to realize like a lot of people parrot language. They don't. Not everyone's understanding of words is the same when they use them, even if there is supposed to be a coherent definition. Like when most black people, when they say they're against racism, I don't know about most, but a lot of them, like we can see, they're not actually against racism as a universal concept. They're against white on black racism. They've shown very clearly they do not take issue with other types of racism. And it's the same with colonialism. So it's important to realize they're being disingenuous. I don't know if it's intentionally or they're just too dumb to recognize that they're misusing the word racism. But yeah, they're not against fucking racism. These things need to be clarified widely in society. And even racism itself has been racism is being overly identified as the problem with historical wrongs. Like I think we both agree that slavery was wrong, enslaving black people was wrong. But the general narrative is that what was wrong about slavery was racism. That racism was the core problem with slavery. But that's a misassessment of the issue, right? The core problem with slavery is liberty infringement. But they don't like that because we already have liberty infringement covered in our legal institutions. We already have it sorted out. We've already sorted out that shit. They prefer to just blame racism. They've blamed racism to the point that they see racism as a more serious moral wrong than liberty infringement. And it's even worse than that because like we said, their definition of racism isn't a universal concept. It's white people being racist. So they clearly see it's pretty fair to say I would say that the norm in the Western world is that people see white racism against others as a greater moral wrong than liberty infringement. Uh, it,
yeah,
it and I'd say it logically follows that if that is your morality, we can predict that they will use if they like because they see racism, quote unquote racism, as worse than liberty infringement, they will inevitably infringe on liberty because of this perceived racism, because they see the racism as a greater moral wrong. Like it's completely linked. We've misassessed historical wrongs by emphasizing racism and not the liberty infringement. They now think that racism is more morally wrong than liberty infringement. So it logically follows that they will infringe on liberty because of racism. It's going to happen. It's like the actual substance of people's morality like does actually like it's predictable. You can predict outcomes based on the logical substance of their morality. Like it's important to actually be logically coherent, and they're not. And it's a completely dismissed thing in society. People don't value logic, but it's really important.
and that's that's what's happening though. When you state that one group can do this and another can't, like when you're making moral judgments based on logic, uh, you fundamentally have a way of being able to make statements that apply universally, right?
Yeah, and it'll prevent you from being inconsistent, and that's how you have a society that's just, where people have, you know, where people aren't just being fucked with, like at the whims of some state power.
Exactly, because and it's that's why it's so important that you are consistent. I mean, imagine if the law were such that um like it was just up to how people felt that day, you know? It's like murder was okay, I feel like murder is okay today. Like imagine I'm a judge and I just believe murder is okay today. And all the people who were murdered that day could just, they could just be set free. Like they weren't charged or anything. Like imagine, like we know fundamentally that that's wrong because we know we're not being consistent. We know that the law should be applied equally, no matter how people feel about it, right? I mean, to act on whims like that, it doesn't create a stable, proper way to function.
Yeah, and yeah. There's a very logical element to morality. It's like, because it's like that's how,
Exactly,
like,
because a lot of people want to believe that morality is purely based on emotions, but it's not. I'm
yeah. Yeah, it's like it's logical. Like, it's like that's like a typical logic problem you'd see, like with your murder example. A typical logical problem you would see, like on an IQ test or whatever, would be like, if X is wrong and this person does X, is this person wrong? It's like, yes, based on the premise that X is wrong. So if murder is wrong, if this person does this thing that we've determined to be wrong, are they wrong? It's like, yes, it logically follows. Like, there's a very logical element to morality, and and then that has really big implications, because we know that different people have different ability for logic, and that it's largely innate. So if we recognize that logic is a big part of morality, then of course we have to recognize that morality is largely genetically determined, and we have to take that seriously, right?
because we do put um like at the very top of what we believe should be the truth,
Yeah, it's it's very important.
and we know that logic has like the ability for humans to process things in a logical way has basically it has been literally progress. Like it is almost like the literal definition of progress. Like since we've been evolving all these hundreds of thousands of years, as a hominid species, it's our ability to logically process things, and it's brought forth the scientific method for one, which has completely revolutionized thought and the way we process everything. That's just one example of it.
Yeah, but logic is such an undervalued thing in society these days. It's treated as if it's like, it's not like some fucking genuinely important thing. It's treated as if it's treated as if it's one avenue of doing things. As if there are alternatives. There's different ways to be. Logic is one way that some people are. It's even worse than that, because there's words like terms like nerds and even autistic people. If you're logical, you can actually be like diagnosed with a mental disorder and be called autistic. It's treated as if it's like not necessary for anything. It's just like a different mode of being that is, and it's often seen as a worse mode of being. It's fucking really crazy how little logic is valued.
Like I can't
And
help
it's
but to think that a lot of great scientists and thinkers were probably labeled as not autistic, but I feel like people in their societies, their contemporary societies, would have had terms to label them, right? Like they would have
yeah,
seen somebody like Galileo, and they would have called him certain names, right? Oh, there he is, like looking through those telescopes. Who knows what he's doing? While other people were maybe praying, like he was actually trying to study the heavens and actually come up with some sort of way to process reality in such a way that was consistent with like visible observations. And I don't know, like that's it's
yeah,
obvious that yeah, it's just obvious we see how important it is now, but I don't think people realize how much progress we still could do it in terms of logic, and it really is just such a deep tool set that I don't know. It's like
society's
it doesn't. It's not like we've stopped. Logic like we can continue in different venues to figure things out and understand the world better.
yeah, but now the logical people are generally just labeled fucking autistic. It's actually, it might have been better back in Newton's day. Well, for one, he's living in fucking Britain, which is different than like multicultural shit mess America. So they might have been more tolerant of logic in that sense. But also, I don't know, they like it. How much damage to the world has the word fucking autism done? Or just the word nerd, like just because like we were saying with language, like people don't think up the words they use. They're just words they hear, and then people think largely in language, and so the language that is common, the language that is available to people, it plays a fucking huge role in how people see things. So when you have like we were saying, that's how the left operates with fucking emotionally loaded buzzwords. They don't get into any further depth, and yeah, I don't know, like there's all these phenomena like that are like with regards to these emotionally loaded buzzwords like racism, anti-Semitism, fucking even I'd say autism, um, xenophobia, homophobia, like all this shit. Like it's such a the fact that it's just such an umbrella. There are such umbrella terms that we're not getting into in any depth, and it's I think it's very important we get into more depth about them because society will act like the society will act in accordance with the language that is common in it. Like how we had the term racism. If that wasn't a concept, like how would that being a concept and us not getting any more specific in common society about it
And us
has
not
led
doing the job of substantiating what that means is actually
exactly.
causing a lot of actual real pain in the world,
Yeah,
like genuine pain.
it's things need to be clarified more. Language is very important and it needs to be clear. Like its purpose is to make things more clear. It needs to be expanded upon. And the fucking I don't know. We need to do something about the language in society. We need to dissect these fucking pseudo intellectual, emotionally loaded buzzwords for one. And yeah, we need to language more clear language needs to be more common. Like we need to clarify certain types of white nationalists, for example, certain types of racism. If there was a word, like if there was genuinely a word, like two different words, one for anti-black racism, one for anti-white racism, if there were two different words, we wouldn't have the problems we do right now because the black people, if they were being honest, they would just be using the word for anti-black racism. Everyone would see, oh, these people are just in favor of their own group. They don't actually care about the universal concept. But because we don't have the two separate words, like the more clarifying language, people assume they're talking about a universal concept when they're not. They're talking about anti-black racism. They don't give a fuck about anti-white racism, and they're anti-white racist themselves. Like it's caused a lot of fucking confusion and destruction. Things need to be fucking clarified more. And I was thinking about fucking language the other day, um, like certain people might have less like propensity for logic, and it might be somewhat genetic. The reason I was thinking about that the other day is because you know how like most languages, I don't know about most, but a lot of languages have like gendered language, where like random things will have male and female versions, or like different words like that don't have anything related to like genitals or biological sex will have gendered language.
It's interesting because I think I know out of the Indo-European languages, I think English is one of the few that doesn't do that, right?
Yeah, English. That's I value English a lot for that. Like we don't use gendered like language to refer to anything that isn't actually involving like biological sex. I think that's how it should be because like a fucking chair isn't a male or female. Why would you assign a male or female aspect to that? But I find it interesting because like we were saying, most people, like most genetic groups had gendered language. The English didn't. The English came to like obviously created the English language. They made not on their own, but English speaking countries made, which are countries who had a genetic population that didn't use gendered language. They made these Western countries that were prosperous, like Canada, the US, Australia, UK. And then as we've brought in all these people who have come from genetic populations that do use gendered language, they're now trying to push for gendered language. Or they're trying to push this concept of gender being this non-biological sex thing. It's just kind of interesting. It's like clearly like it suggests that there's a genetic component to seeing things like that, because that's how they formed their own languages, and then they come into a society where that doesn't do that, and they're still pushing for it. It kind of like it might be related to a certain way of thinking that is somewhat genetically based. You know what I'm saying? Like these people.
Exactly. I'd say it's less logical to look at a table and describe it as a she. I
Yeah,
really do. I agree with
it's
you. Like to
ridiculous.
view a table or to view a car and to call it a he, and I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't make.
It's pretty ridiculous. Yeah.
I don't agree with it. I think there should just be biological sex. That's what gender should be. Biological sex, male and female. That's fucking it. Like, why would you just like? It's this. It's I don't know. It's why would you call a fucking chair a male or female? It doesn't make any fucking sense. But certain people do this. Like they've done it historically with their languages, and then as we've changed the demographics of the English speaking countries, they're trying to make us change our concept of gender to more similar to how they're structured their languages. So maybe like there is a genetic component to certain people thinking like that. I don't know. Like it's hard to fucking analyze. There's so much genetic. There's so many hypothetical genetic traits that we don't understand. Just that alone makes it is reason enough to completely fucking limit immigration. Like there's so much random shit we don't understand. Like so many different
Because
psychological. Like it's not just
it's
IQ, right? Like it's very varied, right? It's fucking
it's weird how the left basically, when it comes to immigration, the left believes that the right has that the right should be the ones justifying why immigration shouldn't be increased, right? When it really should be the other way around. When you look at it from that perspective, the left should be justifying their positions. Like, why should immigration be increased in certain countries? It's like the onus is on you to prove that immigration won't fundamentally change a country, if
yeah,
that's their argument.
yeah. They're
It's
putting
weird how
forth.
we're just in a society where the left somehow is able to almost get away with all this and place the onus on the right and make the right look like they're somehow less rational
Well,
because of their position.
I think it's because they genuinely lack the capacity for self-reflection and thought, and so they have their thoughts, and then they don't even realize that there's an alternative or that there's another way of seeing things or that there's more to it. So when they put forth their morality, like they're so devoid of the ability to think that they just put it forth, and they're like that's part of why they're closed off to the other options. But yeah, you're right. Like the burden of proof is on them. They're the ones making the policy suggestion. They should have some fucking substantiation, but they don't. It's just always the same exact fucking shit. Whenever you ask any of them why we should have mass immigration, it's always the same like three answers. It's like the economy, or this is stolen land, or fucking there's no difference between races or something like that. Like those are the three that came to mind. Like they all say the exact same shit. Like I genuinely think they struggle to think. Like they don't have their own thoughts. They genuinely all parrot each other. They all parrot the same talking points. They're not actually doing thinking themselves. It's fucking
It's a
ridiculous.
real problem because they they really believe that what they're doing is virtuous. Like they truly believe it. I think fundamentally what they believe is that like that the amount of wealth that the West has, they truly believe that it's it's fundamentally not justified, right? They don't believe it's justified, and they believe because of that that to equalize things or to try to make things more to redistribute the wealth is actually justified because it was created in an unjust way, you know? It's almost like their way of trying to balance things.
Yeah,
Even though I think part of the problem is that they don't realize how wealth is produced.
of
They
course they
truly
don't.
like. I
Yeah,
think a lot of I truly believe a lot of leftists truly do believe the lies that it's exploitation fundamentally what that has allowed the West to prosper the way it has and to create the level of success economically that it has produced.
yeah, I agree. I think at the core of a lot of their views is this like perception that it's wrong that the Western world is so much more well off than the rest. I think they like intuitively see it as something that's deeply wrong. And part of that is because I think they start with a false premise. They start with their equality mythology. Like they have the false premise, or they have a. Well, I'll just say premise. I'll give them. They have a premise that all people are equal. Like there's no differences in intelligence between different groups. And so if you do start with that premise and then you look at the world, then it's like, so if there are these major differences in different nations, but we're all equal, then that leads you to look along certain lines for why we're not doing as well as each other, right? Like if you do start with that premise, it makes you see the situation in a different way, but it's an unsubstantiated premise. Why would anyone assume that all groups are the same in terms of their ability to do things? Like that's yeah, like why start with that fucking premise?
Exactly. Why start with that premise? If you know that individuals vary, then why is the premise of a group, which is a collection of individuals varying from another group, like why is that so ridiculous? Like if you just start off from the roots of what you observe in your environment, you know that people are different, and if
Yeah.
people are different, then you know that groups of people will be different
Yeah,
statistically, right? On average.
why would every single group have the exact same distribution of different individuals?
Right,
It
within
doesn't
it.
make any fucking sense. And yeah, and this is what I mean when I say we have our views. Like our views are literally just the result of trying to be intellectually honest about things. Like it's easy to get into this like mind state where like we're battling the left and we're on fucking teams. And yeah, they want to fucking go to war with us. White people will fucking go to war with them. It's easy to kind of get in that mind state. But when you sometimes you gotta fucking like just look back and just realize like, hold on, I'm honestly all I'm doing is being intellectually honest. That's why I have these views. Like I'm genuinely trying to be a good person. How I always saw being a good person. That meant being intellectually honest, like not making shit up, like not just believing bullshit. I'm just trying to be consistent and intellectually honest. That's why we have these positions, like we just said. Why would we just believe that all the groups are the fucking same? That doesn't make any fucking sense. And we're being treated as evil for being like more logic, for being above average at logical ability, and it's fucking ridiculous. And these people are the thing is like they're perfectly willing to acknowledge differences. It's not even that they're. It's even worse than what we were just saying because they have like a split mind where they'll have this premise that we're all equal when it suits them, but like
Yeah, but
if
when
you
when it comes to the division between wealthy and not wealthy, it's like suddenly there is a difference in groups, right? Suddenly the wealthy are portrayed in a certain way, and the poor are portrayed in a certain way as well, right? Is that the splitting that you're talking about?
well, I was gonna say no, I was gonna say like if you if you bring up the fucking NBA or the 100-meter dash, and when we say why are blacks disproportionately represented in that, they'll say, oh well, they're just better. So they're willing to acknowledge group differences, but only when it's not white people being better, basically, or when it's not black people being labeled as worse. So really, their views are they're black supremacists.
Yeah,
Like
because how
they,
many people honestly believe that you know what? There's too many black people in the NBA. Like how many people advocate for that?
yeah, and how many people are stupid enough to think that the reason that there are black people in the NBA is not genetically based? Like they have like there's different genetic or the maybe not the NBA is a worse example than the 100-meter dash. The 100-meter dash is like such a clear example of genetic differences. Maybe basketball less so because like I don't know, maybe like because there are a lot of like Balkans in the NBA. Like it's not like blacks are necessarily better than Balkan, like people from that region because they're both tall. So when you account for height, I don't know. But the 100-meter dash is like a clear example of genetic difference. Blacks are the best at sprinting on average in the 100-meter dash. And we know it's genetic, and everyone will acknowledge that, but no one will fucking, and they're perfectly comfortable acknowledging that, but they're not, but then they don't acknowledge any strength or any weakness, any strength of whites or any weakness of blacks compared to other groups. So really, like if we look at their beliefs, they think black people are superior, and that's genuinely the norm in our fucking society. And it's weird. It's I don't know. It's interesting to think why that might be. Like, is it just a cowardice thing? Like people are just genuinely basing their beliefs on what is the easiest to say in public, and
But do
that
you believe it's the easiest to say because people believe that it's somehow more righteous, and they believe it's more righteous because the system was rigged from the beginning, and they're really ultimately they're resentful about the fact that they feel like the system is rigged. It ultimately comes down to this weird amalgamation of subjective beliefs, right? That I don't think these people have actually checked fully. And I'm really not trying to be offensive. I'm really just speaking from what think is going on. I really believe it's unchecked beliefs that are at the root of a lot of this.
yeah,
Like, because
oh, well, of
if you have
course.
certain, because we're all guilty of that. We all feel certain ways about things. We're just human. But to have a fundamental belief that is as important as believing that there's no differences amongst the races, and to never check that, to never truly be, I don't know. It's just
But where does that unchecked belief come from? Is it? I mean, they don't value logic. They don't treat it as serious. They don't.
right.
If they did, they would be morally opposed to saying illogical things. But that's missing. That's lacking in society. Like, why is that? Have we just? I don't know. Have we just had everything taken care of us? All moral issues taken care of us? Like us, we've been so removed from having to. The common person is just removed from having to deal with any moral issue. If something happens, you just call the police. You just vote up for politicians who are like we're just removed. Are we just removed from having to actually process things, process moral issues ourselves? And that's led us to not value logic. Like we're just maybe too well off so that people don't have to like maybe take any academia seriously. I don't know. There's a lot of complexities, but at the end of the day, I would say it's
But do you think
largely.
it's especially egregious because we celebrate logic when when the medical community comes up with a cure to a disease, or when there are computer analysts working on creating software to increase sales or whatever. Like we appreciate logic in that sense, but we seem to have less of an appreciation for it when it comes to tackling societal issues, right? We almost
Yeah,
dismiss that. We almost dismiss logic in that sense.
we have
We
this.
almost
Yeah, we have this disconnect as if it's not related to morality, as if morality is this emotional thing. We have this idea that being a good person is not related to intelligence. And I think that's fundamentally flawed.
that's where you get all these people from Silicon Valley who are supposedly logical and intellectual, um, having certain viewpoints that we don't think are logically consistent. It's almost like they're picking and choosing what where they want to place, you know, where they want to be logical ultimately.
Yeah, they don't truly value logic. Society doesn't really associate. There's like a disconnect where it's like, and I think what's the disconnect based on? It's based on something similar where it's like, yeah, this person's smart, but it's like, but they're lacking something. We could like people have the desire to be like, yeah, this person's smart, but this other person's good at something else. Like this person's smart, but they're lacking something. They have this need to downplay intelligence, but they don't have the same need to downplay other traits. It's like a particular thing about intelligence that people have, like people Maybe it's like maybe that's subconsciously revealing that they do view it as ultimately superior. Because people won't do the same thing when it comes to physical attributes. People will be like, yeah, this person's just better at running. They're just more athletic genetically than you. Um, and no, it doesn't mean they're not also as smart as you. Like you're just saying they're not as smart as you also because you want to feel better because they're better physically than you. Like we don't do the same thing physically for people. Now I don't know why that is. Is it just because like maybe it's because you can't deny physical reality to the same extent that you can deny logic. You like maybe that's it. I don't know. You can't deny physical reality. If someone's good at a sport, it's evident. You compete and you find out who's good. Whereas if
Yeah,
someone's good at
or like lifting a weight, like that's a very
yeah, it's like
like it's really evident, right?
you can't be in denial about it. Whereas if you can debate someone and both people can think they won and all the audience can be wrong about who won. It's not like it's not objective. Like someone either won or didn't, but it's not as evident to people. And so maybe is that part of the reason that this shit's going on? Like because they can get away with denying it more? They feel like, they can form psychological denial about it and no one will really know. Uh Maybe is that part of it? I don't know.
And that's
There's
part of the thing about like we discussed bringing shame back into society, because we think it like there is a genuine um there's benefits to that, where if people aren't adhering to reality, like you kind of have to shun them. You kind of have
yeah,
to show them that like you're not okay with it, really.
exactly. I agree. It's like with the denying physical reality thing versus denying like the logical merit. It's like yeah, if someone just fucking deadlifts a certain weight in front of you, and then someone's just like, oh no, no, this person's still stronger than that person, even though you just saw it disproven, everyone would be like, what the hell is wrong with you? You're seriously in denial. Whereas
Yeah, like
if,
that would be like a form of insanity, right?
yeah, so like the shunning is inherently there because it's obvious in an obvious example of denial. So maybe it's the fact that people think they can do that and without others being aware that they're doing it. That causes the lack of shame when it comes to logical issues. So yeah, I agree. Shunning is very important. People, we need to put out our perspective. We need to expose how the left is fraudulent and logically inconsistent and wrong as much as we possibly can. Just at the very least just to make it clear that to these people that we know that they're in denial. Like we can see what's going on at the very least. Maybe that's because I feel like that's part of what denial is. It's what people will do it when they think like they'll be more prone to do it if no one else is aware they're doing it, right? I think humans are like that in general. We're more likely to shift into bad habits if no one's watching. If we perceive that someone's aware that we're doing something wrong, we'll obviously be less likely to do it.
And that actually ties back into the concept of God in a way, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because a lot of people truly believe that God is like God has many definitions, but part of that is the belief that there is ultimately a consequence for everything we do, right?
Yeah.
Like we
You
can't just hide in the shadows, so to
exactly.
speak.
There's no hiding. Yeah, I would argue that belief in God or like maybe the deep underlying psychological most important psychological mechanism going on there is belief in intelligence itself. Just having belief in an intelligent being, like someone that belief that someone knows like that there is an intelligent being. That's what's lacking. It's yeah, no, it's an interesting thing going on because
And
that's what's lacking
that's
in society.
and I believe I can still be agnostic about certain aspects of God, like certain aspects where like you'd really have to go deep into the concept to define what you mean by it exactly. But when it comes
Yeah.
to the belief in God, the belief of God being some sort of psychological phenomenon where you know that there are consequences for everything you do, I do believe in that absolutely.
For sure. I think we're both similar in that sense. We both believe, like, it's not even a belief, it's definitive reality that God is a genuine psychological phenomenon that exists. And we respect it. Like, it's obviously an important psychological phenomenon that happens in humans. There's something important going on there, and it's not meaningless. It's real in that sense. So yeah, I think we both said we're not religious earlier, but we kind of just we think about we don't what we mean by that, I think, is we don't adhere strictly to any religion, like, because we're not just gonna be like, we're not just gonna take a book's word for things, like, do this because God said so. Like, that doesn't fully make sense, so we're not just gonna go along with that. And I think we both try to not believe in anything supernatural, because that would violate our morality of being intellectually honest, like we were saying. But we still like to think about, like, these things. We recognize these things are important, and there's complex, important things going on here.
And honestly, I think we're both somewhat acquainted with the atheist community, and I'm a bit disappointed that a lot of them don't like to delve into that. I think at the core of a lot of atheists, I think is they're kind of angry in a way, right?
Yeah,
Like they kind of
yeah,
have a like they're fully right that a lot of organized religions are really shitty. Like they do shitty things, but to not acknowledge the importance of religion, I mean,
yeah.
there's something lacking there.
There is in the yeah. That's how I got onto YouTube in the first place. Well, not YouTube, but in terms of people discussing genuine ideas on YouTube. It started with the atheist section of YouTube for me, and yeah, they're hypocritical. They expose themselves in many ways. One is that
The amazing atheist.
oh, I don't want to fucking get started on the amazing atheist. He's been saying some dumb shit lately. But yeah, he was one of the people that I guess started listening to pretty early. But yeah, like, they're like, atheists are not all of them obviously, but they're like, they like to say they're in favor of science and evolution, but for one, they won't, but so they'll say that, but then they won't look at religion from an evolutionary perspective. If you look at religion from an evolutionary perspective, like, religious groups of humans are the ones that survive. That suggests that there is some genuine utility to religion. And then also, most atheists have shown themselves to be in complete denial of science when it violates their morality. When it's about racial differences, they'll completely shun you like witch burners. They're it's really that was a big split. Like, I think that was a big split in society, or on the online intellectual world. I know that's how I heard about the alt hype channel, because he was an atheist, and then I heard about him because of some other atheist calling him an idiot and calling him racist. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, you're calling this guy an idiot, but you're not really making any coherent arguments. You're just, like, kind of shunning him based on emotion. So let me go check out this guy's channel. And that's how I discovered the alt hype. And now he's a much more relevant YouTuber than the atheist who I saw that post from. But yeah, it's an interesting split. And it goes back to, again, what we were saying, like, again, like, both of these things are linked. We're just trying to be intellectually honest. Like, that's genuinely our morality. And we're being fucking shunned as if we're evil.
And it's kind of led us to be described by others in a weird way, because it's like, I guess on paper we're right wing, but we're also we're not religious, but we're willing to discuss racial differences. So it's like we're in a pretty weird category actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the whole political spectrum thing is changing now. It's kind of hard to sort out. I have a feeling we're not that abnormal.
Yeah,
Maybe we are, though. I don't know.
because aren't a lot of atheists I don't know, their views tend to be more
Leftists, yeah, because they're fundamentally hypocritical, I would say. Um,
like
actually,
part of
the
our idea was to create a channel called Intellectual Ammunition, where we literally kind of expose these people, like for being
hold on,
fraudulent, basically. Like you were saying, they pretend to be pro science, but they're really not. Like,
yeah, that's another channel that's coming. We're gonna have another fucking channel. Um, we're gonna do podcasts on this one, and then we'll have more fucking shit coming. So we're approaching an hour. Do you want to end it on an hour?
Sure.
So yeah, if anyone watched this whole thing, yeah, ask or comment whatever, and in our next podcast, so podcast number 2, we will fucking respond to everything that is commented. All right, that has been the first fucking podcast. Yeah, fucking subscribe if you and comment and shit like we already said if you want to hear more, and we genuinely want to have dialogue. Like we genuinely want to discuss issues. If you have anything to add to what we've said, we're open to hearing it. If you want to ask us fucking anything, if there's anything on your mind that you just want fucking to discuss with anyone, like we'll respond to anyone, like literally anyone. We don't have this is our first podcast, so we don't have a fucking audience now. So we genuinely want an audience, and we genuinely want to engage on fucking intellectual issues. We think it's important for society, and like we were talking about the atheist community. I remember when YouTube used to have video responses, so there would be actual more conversation. So I kind of want to do that kind of thing, like where we genuinely discuss things honestly. So if anyone wants to reply to this or make comments, we'll genuinely respond to them, and we genuinely want to fucking have dialogue about things. So any fucking subject, any subject at all, any comment at all, we'll fucking respond to honestly. All right. So I guess
I just want to thank anyone for listening. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. If anyone's listened this far, then we value your fucking listenership, and we're not trying to just treat people as fucking listeners. We're not trying to be like we're not like, oh, you have to pay money to fucking comment. Just fucking respond. We genuinely want to engage with you. If you listen this far, then it means you probably think somewhat along the same lines as us. So you might as well fucking talk to us, and we'll respond. And then maybe you could even join this podcast. Who the fuck knows? But anyway, we'll end it here. And yeah, anyone who's listened, thank you for your time. Farewell.